Welcome to Sales Mavericks and Marketing Rebels, the show where bold business owners, savvy entrepreneurs, and sharp thought leaders push boundaries, challenge conventions, and redefine success in sales and marketing. And now your hosts, Nicholas Luisi and Marco Salinas.
Hi there, it's Nicholas Luisi, my partner in crime, Marco Salinas, with this week's episode, this current episode of Sales Mavericks and Marketing Rebels. Once again, this episode, as well as all of our episodes, are created for you and brought to you by Pina Colada Media. If you are thinking about a podcast, and you better be thinking about a podcast, especially after this last election that we just saw, it was the king of the podcast. You want to reach out to the folks at Pina Colada Media. They do a great job. All you have to do is kind of show up, talk, and everything else happens. So get on the bandwagon, create a podcast for you, create a podcast for your company, and watch your lead generation soar, and reach out to the folks at Pina Colada Media. Marco, what hat are you sporting today, young man?
Oh, well, today I'm representing for my favorite Texas barbecue joint, Franklin's Barbecue.
Franklin's
world famous
Barbecue.
Yeah,
There's
was my
one that I remember. What was it, Eights or Cue Ball or something down there?
I'm wondering if that's more in the Dallas area.
Yeah, it was a chain. It was big, huge place. Good barbecue.
The majority of Texans, we take barbecue almost like a religion in a sense, and so the real deal ones, none of them are too big. None of them have too many stores. They're usually one or two, maybe three. That's kind of a prerequisite for being a real deal, authentic Texas barbecue joint. You can't be too big. You know what I mean? Yeah. Then you're just another McDonald's, basically, in that kind of a mindset.
Okay, I got
which
you. So
violates. Violates some barbecue sins, so to speak.
Well, I love me a good barbecue. We had barbecue this weekend. We hosted my nephew, turned 16. So drivers of Wisconsin, watch out. There's a new guy on the road. He's a good kid. He's an Eagle Scout. He's all that good stuff. So I don't worry about him on the road. All right. So we got the hat covered. We talked some barbecue. Now I'm hungry. Now I got barbecue on my mind. I am hungry. I got to, when we get done, we're going to have to go get a snack.
Yeah.
I think if you're a marketer and you didn't pay attention to what just happened in this last election, as we were sitting here filming this, our new president, number 47, is our old president, number 45. Donald Trump is back in the White House, or soon to be back in the White House. The Republicans have taken over the Senate, a clear sweep. The Republicans have taken over the House of Representative. He won not only the Electoral College as well as the popular vote. So there's no mishigash and complaints about that. It was a mandate by the American people. I think a couple things I found intriguing, and I want your opinion on this too. But if you're a marketer and a salesperson, one is, this guy's a beast. He is a closer like there has never been a closer. I heard that he didn't take a day off in the last 74 days. He was up for 72 hours. He is just a machine. He's old. He's 70-something, 76, and has got more stamina than some 24-year-olds I got selling for me. I mean, this guy is a machine and focused on pushing through to the close, never taking your foot off the gas.
That's right.
I thought that was interesting. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a whole lot to unpack there. I mean, this was like the biggest comeback story that I have ever witnessed in my entire life. They tried to throw everything at the guy to stop him from legal suits and different incidents that happened during his previous campaign and his previous administration, anything and everything possible basically to get in this guy's way. And I think from the marketing perspective, and this is probably what we need to touch on, Nick, is as well as the sales, how do you take something that is perceived to be so incredibly negative against you and spin it around and actually just invigorate your followers even more so, and then maybe even bring over a few others that were on the fence?
Well, I think But that's interesting, right? That's a lot to think about. There's the social aspect of it, right? The economic aspect of it. It's I think at a certain point, the average person, you know, was saying, okay, yeah, at a certain point, if you're saying he's that horrible, you might be telling me a lie, right? And
Right.
just use that. I think the classic direct response, though, is something to think about. You got to stand for something. You got to repel the people that you don't want and will never vote for you and will never pay attention to you. And you have to attract with all of your ability your followers, like you said, or people that are your ideal customer profile or avatar that you are going after. And I think he used the pounding on him with the courts, the pounding on him with the civil suits and the federal suits, pounding on him during his administration of, twice impeached, or God knows, three times impeached, maybe, or time,
Yep.
it's just so much that, what it did, it just repelled people. And those that maybe have a level of mistrust of government or the man, right, or a federal regulation or something of that nature, it just gravitated towards him. I
That's
think,
right.
people that listen to this, right, that are marketing rebels and sales mavericks, small business owners were just being hit over hit
That's right.
by, and they just were hugely attracted to him, for so
That's right.
many reasons. One is he's got a business track record. Two is, and I know they always throw the, hey, he had, this failure. I'm like, in business, you got to try stuff, right? In
Boy, do
business,
you.
there are product lines that don't work out. You close down that business, right? There
That's
are
right.
services that maybe lose their face in the American public's desire, and you got to move those things on. So,
That's
I
right.
take a little bit of that with a grain of salt, and it's always being bantered about by people that never started a business in their life, right?
That's right.
So there's
That's right.
that. But, I think what you look at, just the amount that they spent, right? I mean, so this is everybody that goes up against a big brand, the Democrats outspent them by,
That's
what
right.
they spent 1.3 billion compared to 355 million. I
Yep.
mean, they just were, the Republicans and Trump were just savvy of using media. I think you and I talked about it. Their texts were some of the best texts that I ever read, right? Their
That's
SMS
right.
texts and their emails. And, they went and they figured out, here's a demographic that nobody is serving, which is men, young men specifically, or men in general. Let me speak to them. Let me speak to the conversation that was going on in their mind,
That's
right?
right.
Let's talk about what they're concerned about, what is keeping them up at night, which is a classic direct response copywriting move, right? We've learned that from Dan Kennedy, who
Oh,
is
yes.
actually turning 70, I think, coming up soon. So, you talk about a guy that just really pounded it through, went on long form podcasts, right? Just did podcast after podcast after podcast,
That's
is
right.
running making podcast after podcast after podcast. And, they were on Joe Rogan for 3 hours. Unbelievable what they did and what they accomplished, and the results, the proof's in the pudding, as they say.
That's right. That's absolutely right. I think this particular election will definitely go down in history as the election that really connected with people the most. This is the one where we had a candidate that was really truly listening. What do the people want? Even if you look in the past, I mean, that's always been kind of a thing. We want to be the representative of the people. But let's be honest, prior to Trump, we all kind of just went along with it and said, well, you got this guy and you got this person here. And you didn't realize how both of them really were mostly looking out for themselves. It really
Sure.
wasn't so much of this people oriented kind of a thing, which we've seen. That's a big part of what Trump is doing. I think that's a big part of this, why he kind of swept everything, every single category possible out there. The people have spoken. That's what we're interested in. We want something more real, more authentic. We're tired of just all the attorneys. We're tired of all the people that are lifelong politicians. It's really cool just to have somebody in there who didn't spend their life in politics. you know, because like you said earlier, the people have gotten smarter, just like we talk about sometimes, Nick, with this whole idea of the consumer getting smarter when it comes to buying and making purchases. They don't fall for the old tricks that they used to, because the consumer is a lot more educated. Well, guess what? The voter is too. The voter is too, and they already see through a lot of the traditional media. They're not trusting the CNNs anymore of the world, right? And this is why I think podcasting was so powerful this time around, because the people went on there, they weren't all uptight, they weren't talking their typical stuff that you would see on you know, the Sunday morning politics show and what have
Sure,
you, right?
sure. Yeah.
They were having, I mean, him and Joe Rogan were having some seriously real conversations. And you know, in his opponent's defense too, she did the exact same thing with some of the shows that she went on. She was more laid back, she was more loose. I think actually, had she done a little better with that, she might have had a better chance.
Yeah,
And so
like the Who's Your Daddy podcast, which I think was a long form podcast, and you know,
that's right.
another one that, you know, kind of speaks to certain things. And I think I just read, I was reading something, you know, because to me, certainly the results are great, but the most important thing is I like looking at it from the marketing perspective, right? So what did
100%.
they do? What didn't they do? What happened? What didn't they happen? I think if you look back at past campaigns, you know, the first Obama campaign was the first one to really embrace Facebook, right? And social media and utilize that. And they had a great, you know, digital strategy and
Right.
really went to, you know, the younger demographic. That message, the first message kind of resonated with them.
That's right.
You know, I think if you see the one thing though that they spoke about, if you think about messaging, right? So there's the media aspect of it, right, which is just your media channel. And then there's the messaging aspect of it. And they just knew what was forefront on the minds of the general population was what was going on in their pocketbook, right? People vote on their pocketbooks, right? And they just hammered and hammered and hammered everything that was going on. Second thing, you know, of our safety, right? And the immigration factor of that. And, you know, you're in Texas, which I'm sure you see it. We don't want to get into the politics of that on this. We see it here in Chicago, right? I mean, I'm in a very affluent neighborhood that I live in, but you know, you go to the grocery store and you know they're sitting on curbs, and you know, not saying that that's, listen, everybody's got to feed their family, and God bless, you know, but it's on the mind of people, right? So it's jobs,
That's right.
it's the economy, it's, you know, eggs are $7, right? And you know, and milk is $5, and you know, and you know, and now I got this and all the other social stuff that just got noisy and wasn't what the Main Street people wanted, right? You know, I don't have young children, you do, but you know, the all the other social stuff, and we'll leave this alone because it's a marketing and sales podcast, but you know, you just got lost in the messaging. And what happens is you didn't test your messaging. So you had maybe vocal people that were the minority that you thought were the majority. So you were using that messaging, right? Or maybe you had people on staff. And this is something for a business owner to remember is, you know, sometimes your staff might be of a certain ilk, but they're not your customer, right?
That's
and I remember being in a conversation, or maybe he was talking about it, and Dan Kennedy was talking about how he got brought in by a company, maybe it was Glazer, not Gunther Renker or somebody, and it was for a ED pill, right? An erectile dysfunction pill. And the writers and the marketers and everybody that were on this project were 20 something years old. Well, they're never going to have the problem and can't speak to the language of a 50 to 60 to 70-year-old man that just can't perform as he wants to, right? So you got to think about, who are you using for your marketing advice? Who is coming at you, right? And saying, this is the messaging, it has to be, oh, blah, 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 blah. You got to field test that with your customer, with your target audience, with your avatar. I remember once, I was looking at TikTok. I don't know if you do any client work on TikTok.
I do.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was kind of flipping through, and I looked at a trial attorney, defense attorney, right? and they were doing their staff was doing a TikTok dance, and I'm like, really? This is who I'm going to go for when I've got a serious problem, right? And
That's
so,
right. That's
I
right.
think you have to, but to the 20-year-olds that were their office administrator and their person answering the phones and maybe a paralegal, this is what they see all day. And
That's right.
great, it could be a great medium for you. It could be a great media source for you, but you got to think about the messaging and what does that do to your brand? And what does that
Very
do to the
much.
person that is looking for who you want to serve? And I
Very
think
much.
they did it great. I got it. My hand goes off to the Trump campaign. They did a phenomenal job. They ran
It
a
was a
phenomenal.
master class. It was a
Yeah,
master class in how to do it. Now, I wanted to ask you though a quick question, Nick. I mean, what kind of a percentage boost do you think Trump received from something that he could not have planned, that you could not stage, that you could not manufacture, which was a very organic but emotionally charged event, which was his assassination attempt?
yeah.
How much of an enormous boost do you think that actually gave to him in his campaign? I mean, it had to have been pretty big in some capacity.
So, I think the American public wants strength. And I think he showed strength, right? So I think it was a boost. Was it 3 points? Was it 5 points of an electorate that was on the fence? I still go back to I think it helped, or at least when you had the vis-a-vis, when you look at it vis-a-vis the other person that was in the White House and president who just felt old and frail, right?
Correct, correct.
And so it probably helped in when it first happened, but I still think people voted on their pocketbooks, right? People
Yeah,
voted on the economy. People
sure.
voted on the overcorrection on social issues that were, that many found appalling, right? And
That's
so
right.
I
That's
think
right.
it was a lot. I don't think it was one thing. I think it was a lot of things, right?
Got you.
And
Yeah.
and it's interesting. I didn't watch any of the. I just saw snippets. It would have been interesting to see the what was going on in the Madison Square Garden event, right? And you and I talked about it. Both, I think, had master classes of how stagecraft at their conventions. I
That's right.
thought their branding was on point, and they did everything right. They controlled the narrative, they controlled everything, and I thought both parties did a great job on that. It would have been
Very
interesting to
much.
see the Madison Square Garden. What did the branding look like? What did the feel look like? All the different messages. One got blown out of proportion, but you got to assume that the media was looking for something negative, so they're going to find it. I don't think what he said
100%.
was appropriate, but I don't think it played it. I don't think it played anything. I
Right.
also, one of the things, it's not just one thing that happens, it's the million things. She chose not to go to the Al Smith dinner, which is a historically Catholic dinner, right? Which raises money for widows and orphans and children.
That's right.
And that drove a wedge between her and Catholics.
That's right.
And I think he ended up getting 56% of the Catholic vote in Pennsylvania,
That's
right?
right.
And
Yep.
and of the Pennsylvania voting population, I think 35 to 40% of it is Catholic. And
That's right.
so, and even if you're not, I mean, I'm ex-Catholic, right? Lutheran now, but certainly Christian based. And I just think, there's probably something not just to Catholics, but just to Christian people saying, "Hey, you're blowing off. You're blowing off, doing some good." Yeah, I know that there's negative. It's they make fun of both candidates, but it's something that every candidate has done, and
That's right.
I don't think that she was a great candidate. That's a different conversation for a different day. But I think, what I want business owners to learn from is, I think she was listening to people that were tone deaf, right? I think the
Yeah,
campaign missed on a lot of things, and this was one of them, right?
for
Missed
sure.
on going on long form podcasts, right?
Yep.
Missed on so many different things, not being on the media, not being on long form podcasts, and just, thought that I don't know if they had it or what, but that's
Yes.
a different conversation for a different day, and there's much smarter people that will be dissecting that.
Sure, sure. Absolutely. No, I mean I think my point about the whole assassination thing was really that um we talked about this also in a previous episode, this whole dynamic of this hero character, right?
Yes.
And you cannot discount the power and effectiveness of that hero role. If it's somebody that you already like, they're just going to like you even more. They're going to double down even further. But, we did see that every single swing state ended up going red on this. And
I
so this
know.
is kind of like, this gives us the absolute proof. Like, they always determine these elections based on those swing states.
Yeah.
And when all of them went one way, it's telling you and it's showing you that the things that went down throughout that campaign event, one party really, really was in touch, and one
Yeah.
party was really making the right moves. In this particular election, there's been plenty in the past where it was blue, but this particular one, it was red. And I saw the map, and almost every single county in the state was red. Even in Texas, we had some down by the border, Nick, that have never voted red, or they hadn't voted red very often. And I mean very rare, like maybe during Reagan type of thing, And
Yeah.
so that spoke volumes. They did an effective job of actually converting people. That is tough to do. And that's what we are doing every day as business owners. We're trying to convert people from non-buyers into buyers. So, we have to be able to pull out that information and say, how do I apply this to my sales presentations? How do I apply this to my marketing that they see before they even get on the phone with me? What can I do to build that up so that we have an effective conversion strategy, so to speak?
Well, the interesting thing is, and I think most business owners probably struggle with the top of the funnel, right? Getting new people, new entrants into the top of the funnel. I know that's a lot of the work that you do, right? Of just kind of getting in and getting into the top of the funnel and getting eyeballs and awareness. And if you think
That's
about a
right.
campaign, right, you've got people that historically have voted for you, and you have to make sure that you get out the vote, right? Get people there. You got to get new people in. And this campaign did so great of a job of getting people that maybe, like you said, historically have never voted for red, right? But did because of the messaging, probably because of what was going on, right? Those border towns, my guess, are seeing a lot of the issues with the immigration issue. And so they're
Absolutely.
like, hey, enough's enough.
That's right.
And so, but as a business owner, how do you change and get people to get attention in a noisy world, right? I mean, how many
That's
emails
right.
do you get? How many emails do you get? How many messages do you get? But also, how do you, when you get people's attention or getting on something like a long form podcast where now you've got 3 hours or an hour or something to just unfiltered talk to your target audience? To
That's
me,
right.
it's ingenious, right? It's just ingenious of the work they did. And there's so much you can learn from these things. So if you just think about it, right? So if you're a business owner, grab a pen and let's just you and I brainstorm, Marco, of all the different things that they did and that what you can apply from a marketing perspective. So the first thing I think is phenomenal market to message to media match, right?
Yes.
Kind of hit the trifecta of that. 2 is different media messages for different geographical locations, right? So it wasn't just one message for everybody. Different geographical messages were great. 3rd is news hacking. They did a phenomenal job of getting conversations of what was going on. 4 is knowing what was going on in the mind of their prospect and talking about that. 5 is staying on message, right? Just pounding the message. 2 is using digital media, using SMS texting, using long form podcasts, right? So alternative media sources. I'm in a state early where Republicans kind of leave you alone. I'm sure you saw a lot of direct mail. I did not see a lot of direct mail, but direct mail in people's mailbox, now having a conversation with them.
That's right.
Phone calls, right? SMS texting, yard signs, right? So I see businesses 24/7 with yard signs going on out there. I see businesses that leave alone direct mail, but should be doing direct mail. So those are like my top 10. How about you? What were your things? I took the easy ones, I know.
Yeah, no, and I think you covered the big ones, and I don't have a full 10, but I'll add at least a few more. I want to mention also that even prior to ever even entering into politics, Trump was already big on his brand,
Yeah, he
right?
had a
I mean, we
million
all
followers on Twitter. Yes,
right,
yes.
right. And I think I'm almost certain it was Dan Kennedy that wrote this, but I had seen a newsletter or something not long ago where he was bringing up the fact that Trump was one of the few people that had actually achieved, which was kind of rare, which was success in two big categories, which was the business and the financial with all the real estate, but then also he was able to do very well in the media himself because he had his own show. And so I remember the first time the guy was elected, a lot of people kept saying that his opponents, I had friends, saying, we just gave the nuclear code to the reality TV star and that kind of thing, right? But they didn't see things through the lens that you and I do, Nick. It wasn't,
Yeah.
they just saw it as somebody that watches television, right? We know that he's doing something much higher, which was really just an opportunity to keep his brand front and center through media, right? Through some sort of a very powerful media outlet. Back then it was just regular old television, which has shifted a lot since then. But I think that proved to be a very powerful and effective move for him because it kept his brand front and center for many, many years and all that he did with the Apprentice. And so, and I'll give a shout out like you did back to Obama. I think Obama was the first one that I ever saw that actually had like an official logo, like his name, his campaign had the little logo that I think we all remember what that logo looked like because they did a really good job branding that. And so Trump was able to kind of take that and then give it his own flavor, his own spin, surrounding his already brand. He's flying around all over the place in his airplane with his name on it, right? Everywhere he goes, it's got that branding. He's putting out, of course, we've got to talk about this. One of the most epic things that he did was the red hat.
Oh,
The red
yes,
hat.
yes. Yeah. Yep,
Right?
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot that. That was phenomenal.
That was a big part of the branding, right? And it
Yeah.
was like, I mean, that was one of the most controversial things. And what is Dan's probably one of the most common things that he beats us over the head with is this whole idea of if you haven't offended somebody by lunchtime, you're doing it wrong.
You're doing
Right?
it wrong, right? Yeah, or you if they don't see something about you from 360, in your office, in their office, then they're going to forget about you. So how many red hats are people not wearing but are sitting on bookshelves,
That's
right?
right.
I think that's a great catch on your part. I can't believe I forgot that. I think the other thing he did that he owned a media source himself. He owned Truth Social, right? So now
Yes.
you have, and I'm not on that, but I think X or what was Twitter, he has that, and that, and I think certainly having Elon was beneficial, right? Because that just became
Huge.
a lot of eyeballs on your messaging, right?
Huge.
So, and I think if you are marketing, I am doing some work and marketing to business owners. I think if you are marketing to business owners, you need to be thinking about how do I get the X platform and how do
Yep.
I use that? Because I think business owners are on that platform.
Definitely.
If you're selling deep red, you need to be on that platform. So I think, it's interesting. I was reading an article or I was reading an excerpt about the creation of The Apprentice, and they actually interviewed other business owners or entrepreneurs or famous business people for that show that probably were more successful financially than him at the time.
Sure.
But what they said is that nobody was as charismatic as him, right? Nobody could captivate the camera as he did. And I think for years, he was in the number one media, geography of the world, New York, right? And he just knew how to manage that and manipulate that and use that to his advantage. And I think, that then carried over into the campaign. Somebody was telling me, we were talking about the betting sites and how the betting sites got it right, and then everything else got it wrong, right? And I'm like, how did they get it right? And he said, the person I was talking to said, I bet on the 2016, and I made about $3,000 on a very small bet because I bet early when I saw him in the first debate. And when he said, this is something completely different that politics has never seen before. And if you go back and you watch the clips of that first debate, it was something completely different.
That's right.
And I think that was it, right? People want, we want to cheer for somebody we feel is on our side, right? We want
Yeah,
people
very
to be
much.
fighting for us. And I think he was the greatest on messaging, right?
Yep,
Greatest I've seen on messaging, and stayed
very
on
much.
messaging at all time.
Yes,
Obama and I think Clinton were good on messaging. If you think about the other side of the aisle, I think they both did a
yes,
great job of messaging and knowing the audience
I
and
agree.
speaking to them. So,
Yes.
well, this was fun. This, anything else? Any last words before we kind of kick it to our sponsors and get
No,
people out?
I'm glad we covered this. I was hoping that we could do an episode and kind of tie a little bow on this.
Yeah.
As you know, this has just been the hot button issue. So we will obviously be watching then what the next 4 years look like. And I think it's going to be exciting times no matter what. I mean, we have somebody that has experience and great negotiation skills. I've read his Art of the Deal, and then there's another book that's written by his lawyer all about negotiation too. That was
Oh yeah,
extremely insightful.
Herb, wasn't it Herb something or other? I heard that was a
Correct.
great book. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. I may find it and put that in the show notes for us here,
yeah.
but the guy, when you read those books, you realize, okay, now I understand why the guy does so well in this role, because a huge part of that job, whoever's holding that office, really has everything to do with negotiation.
Sure,
And
sure.
it is what it is. Trump's a master. He's an absolute master in that regard, and he tries to do things in a way where it's a win-win. It's more of a win-win. It's not just a one-sided thing. It's not just I'm going to clobber you and I'm going to pound you over the head and get my way. He really tries to find a setup that makes the other person happy. And I just saw, case in point, I think I saw the video of him at the White House. I couldn't believe how happy Jill and Joe Biden were hanging out with him.
Yeah.
It was like they felt like they were hanging out with a big celebrity or something. It was really weird. But at the same
Well,
time, I just think that's how powerful and effective this guy can be.
I also think too, I give them credit, right? He even said listen, politics is dirty, it's messy, right? And they put politics aside, but they both put country first.
They did. They
And
did.
I give the Bidens credit for being gracious, and inviting him in, and
That's right.
the Joe is certainly somebody, I like him, don't like him. I'm not asking that, but he did put his country first, right?
That's right.
And also as a comeback guy, right? I mean, that guy had a lot of personal tragedy in his life.
Sure.
But another good book to read, and I read it a million years ago, and I think I've donated it or given it away, because when you kind of move and downsize and all that, you get your bookshelves are the biggest things in my house. Was
Same
The Art
here.
of the Comeback, which is a great book of Trump's to read, right? It's kind of how, I mean, that guy. So if you think about what we teach at GKC and what you and I do with our clients, write a book. That guy, I mean, if you look how many books he's written, it's got to be at least 5, if not
Right.
7. Right?
That's
And
right.
his staff wrote books. He owned a TV show. He controlled the narrative of that. His branding on, I mean, he puts his name on everything. He's the master at that, from not only his hotels to watches and sneakers and everything. I mean, that guy just, it's take your politics aside, and just as a business person,
That's right.
evaluate everything he does and says, how can I put some of this into my business?
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
well, one of the things you got to put in your business is a podcast, folks, right? And listen, if this election didn't show you the power of podcasting, I don't know what will, right? It was a master class of having a podcast. So if you want to do it, you got to reach out to our folks at Pina Colada Media. They are great. They do this show. They make us look good. They're fun to work with, and it's easy peasy. And even if you say, listen, I don't have anybody to talk to, they will work with you and say, who are your customers? Who are your target audience? Who's your avatars? Invite them onto your show and have that conversation. I know in the next couple episodes, we got some great guests coming up. We're going to tease a little bit about that. Some on the sales side, some on the marketing side, some on the YouTube side. Listen, folks, we love talking marketing. We love talking sales. Hopefully you got something on this. We gave you a punch list of 15 things to learn from this. The punch list is probably 20, so maybe we'll add some more and put them in the show notes. But you got to have a podcast, and you always got to be marketing, and you always got to be selling, and you got to keep your foot on the gas, not only till the deal is done, but past the deal being done. So never let up. You can never give up. Never give up. Marco, it's a pleasure as always coming at you. I'm in Chicago. You're in Texas. You're a lot warmer than I am. And I can't wait to see what next episode's hat is. I'm gonna be waiting on pins and needles to see what that is.
Hey, Nick, as always, it's been a blast talking with you. I always enjoy these. This is so much fun. And I mean, this is the stuff that you and I geek out on. So, it doesn't get much better than this, but you're always such a joy to chat with. So thanks again for all your input as usual.
One last word, because I'm sure we're going to record one, but I want all of these listeners, if you haven't got your Thanksgiving cards to send out to your clients and your prospects, you got to do that now. Right. So we talk about everybody does Christmas cards, right? But you got to do your Thanksgiving cards. So go to the store right now and go get your Thanksgiving cards and get them out to your contacts. Marco, it was a joy. It was a pleasure. As always, talk to you in next episode.
See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Sales Mavericks and Marketing Rebels. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Keep pushing the limits in your business. And remember, the Mavericks and Rebels are always ahead of the game. Catch you next time.